got a huge tech sector. So Google and Uber, Facebook, they're all coming here. So
Oh,
you put those three
okay.
sections together, they're recession proof. I mean, we've never had a down market in Pittsburgh since we've been tracking real estate. So mainly jobs and education, and I think just a great quality of life. So secrets out.
My name is Kevin McIntosh, and this is the Closing Table, where we talk to experts about their experience in real estate all across the country. Let's go. All right, welcome to the Closing Table. My name is Kevin McIntosh. We got a special guest with us today on this episode. Per usual, we will be speaking with top producing professional real estate agent Joe Yost. How you doing, Joe?
I'm doing well. I really appreciate the ability to be on here and chat with you. Thanks so much.
Yeah, man. Yeah, thank you. Thank you. I appreciate that. Definitely want to talk to you about your expertise. But before we get there, Joe, let's break the ice with an icebreaker. Got a small game for us. Quick game is called word association. I got a couple words and or phrases I'm going to throw out to you related to real estate. And all I want you to do is give your first reaction, whether that be a word, phrase, explanation, whatever. All right. Sounds good?
Sounds good.
All right. Let's start off. First word or phrase, property management.
Much needed.
Home inspection.
Even more much needed. Very vital. Very vital.
Right. Foreclosure.
Not common.
Mortgage broker.
Best friend. Yeah. Definitely a vital part of this, but best friend. Since we're playing the game, best friend.
Lastly, fair market value.
Who knows?
Interesting. Thank you for playing our quick word association icebreaker game, Joe. Now we move into the serious part of the interview, man. So let's start off by basically explaining what your current market is that you serve. I want you to go into as much detail as possible. First, speaking geographically where you serve, and then get into other details, maybe average pricing, things to do, local landmarks, things of that nature.
Yeah, so I generally do the Pittsburgh regional market. So what that basically encompasses is, I mean, if you go to downtown Pittsburgh and call it a 20 mile radius, that's pretty much the locations that we serve. I feel very, very comfortable in those areas. I know in certain areas of the country that may seem like a large area, but Pittsburgh, it's really not. We're kind of a small city, and I think people think we're much bigger than we are. So, yeah, I live in the South Hills of Pittsburgh, so I'm about 5 miles south of downtown Pittsburgh. And then I started my career in the heart of the city. They call it the East End, which is the east part of Pittsburgh. But now I currently reside in a suburb of Pittsburgh called Mount Lebanon, which is, again, 5 miles south of the city. So, yeah.
Interesting. All right. I've never been to Pittsburgh. It seems like I know that's the second largest city in Pennsylvania, right? Is that next to Philadelphia?
That's correct. Yep.
Okay. How far is it from Philly?
About 6 hours,
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah, well, that's funny because that's typical people's reaction is,
I know.
yeah, I mean, people think like, hey, how's the Philly cheesesteaks? I'm like, I've never had one. I mean, not in Philly. I've never had one in Philly.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
wow, that's crazy.
But it's 6 hours away. I mean, I wouldn't call it a rival just because, but yeah, I mean, there's a little interstate rivalry going on between the two. But Philly's definitely the biggest city in the state. Absolutely.
Nice. Okay, cool. I'm pretty sure the markets are completely different, but we'll leave that alone right now. We're going to focus right where you are. But Joe, just to start off, you go all the way back to starting your career in real estate to the year 2000, correct?
Yeah.
What an interesting year that is.
Seems like yesterday. Yeah, I actually got to start in the mortgage side of things. So I was a mortgage broker. My wife and I, we moved to Arizona to do something fun, and before we had to adult, and that turned into 11 years. But got my real estate start out there. Actually started with mortgage, and been through the whole 2008 debacle, 9, 10 debacle in Arizona, which was extra fun. Yeah, here I am. So it's hard to believe, almost 20 plus years, and I still got hair. I love it, man. Still got hair.
I know. Yo, it's so funny how much that is a factor to showing how good you're doing, right? Because you
Stressing,
could just
man.
stress it.
Oh
Man,
man,
talk
it's
about it.
crazy. Oh yeah.
Hey, so since you talked about being in both, doing with mortgages and being on the real estate sales side of it, can you talk about how your experience in both kind of benefits your clients?
Yeah, interestingly enough, I mean, in 20 plus years, the mortgage stuff really hasn't changed. A young guy like
Hmm.
yourself might not know all this, but like, yeah, there was some crazy stuff in the early 2000s and a bunch of loans that probably shouldn't have been granted. But,
Mm.
since they kind of buckled down on that, I want to say it was Frank Dodd, the act,
Yep.
and
Frank died
it's
at. Yep.
pretty much been the same for the past 20 years. So, a heavy reliance on just conventional mortgage financing, Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
To answer your question, I mean, I've seen some crazy stuff, but it's pretty vanilla, and I think it's pretty helpful because I can actually kind of chat with my clients. They're always looking for the best deal, best rate, etc. So I
Correct.
think there's some advantage for me to understanding a little bit how an APR is different than a rate, maybe helping them decide on what is a better program to go with on the mortgage side. So it's been actually pretty beneficial for me.
There you go. There
Yeah,
you go. See, it's like they, generally a real estate agent or the average consumer would think they're just going to help me look for a home.
yeah,
But, with you having that expertise and experience on the financing side also, they can have a second opinion to whatever their current lender or MLO is telling them. So,
yeah,
absolutely beneficial. I
yeah,
must say so myself.
absolutely.
Being in Pittsburgh, I hear that's one of the most livable cities in the United States. And this is coming from different publications. So it's not like it's just biased coming from Pittsburgh or
Yeah.
anything like that. What factors would you say contributed to this title of being one of the most livable cities in the country?
Well, when they interview those people and get their opinions, I guarantee it's probably not in November, December, January, February. Um,
Yeah.
all joking aside, probably the only downside is obviously winters, and that's an East Coast thing. That's most of the
Yep.
country. There is something special about Pittsburgh. I mean, I grew up here, spent my first 20 years here, and then 11 in Scottsdale, Arizona, which actually is one of the most beautiful places in the country, in my opinion.
I've
But
heard good things.
there is just something about Pittsburgh. So I will tell you, the suburban schools are absolutely amazing. So you got tons of great options when it comes to education for young kiddos, and then even past the younger kids. I mean, we have a tremendous amount of colleges, great accredited colleges in the area.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Lots of culture, lots of diversity, lots of history, and then the buildings are beautiful. So a lot of Pittsburgh, a lot of the history of the United States kind of stems from Pittsburgh. Some of these big guys that you've heard of, the Fricks, the Mellons, the Carnegies, they've all came through Pittsburgh or lived here. So the history is absolutely
Nice.
amazing. So I think a lot of that is the draw. And recently, it's been we were a steel town, and that all fell apart. So I would love to
Right.
know kind of who to give credit to, but somebody at some point kind of transformed Pittsburgh into a very high academic area. We have great universities, a ton of medical hospitals, and we've got a huge tech sector. So Google and Uber, Facebook, they're all coming here. So
Oh,
you put those three
okay.
sections together, they're recession proof. I mean, we've never had a down market in Pittsburgh since we've been tracking real estate. So mainly jobs and education, and I think just a great quality of life. So secrets out.
Wow, look at that. Wow. Okay, so you really painting a picture for people who've never been to Pittsburgh, like just
Yeah.
kind of giving them a good rundown how the economy in general is running.
Yep.
That's great. That's great to hear.
Yep.
Okay, and you already spoke about how the history behind Pittsburgh, right? We're talking about historic architecture, Victorian era homes and buildings and things of that nature. How does these unique type of architectures and buildings like that? How does that affect the value and desirability with potential buyers
A
and
ton.
investors?
Yeah, a ton. I mean, I will tell you, if you're looking for character, if you're looking for uniqueness, quirky is a word I use often here because we are just quirky. But you've got some of these old traditional buildings that are built better than anything could be built in today's age, and
Mm,
they're just beautiful. So we have a ton of them. We have certain neighborhoods that have more than others. But I will tell you, it's a huge draw. I've got this. It's a mansion. It's for sale in just a unique part of Pittsburgh. just a suburb called Bellevue. And the average price point in that neighborhood is probably 250, 300,000, but we've sold this thing for 750. But it's a national historic just landmark. We've had people from all over the country inquire on it, and the social media presence on it's insane. People, California, New York. So it just kind of goes to show you your question of like that type of property is a huge draw to Pittsburgh. So the architecture is absolutely amazing. Frank Lloyd Wright has a presence here. So yeah, we all everything that you said. We're checking off the boxes here.
Yeah. I think we have in the Detroit area, Frank Lloyd Wright has done some architecture there too, so I'm familiar with him. But
Yep.
man, that's crazy. I think about old homes, and I've had realtors who were specialize in the niche of old homes and were just old home advocates. I like it, but I don't like it. I mean, I like it because it's like the three woods. It has the brick house, that foundation. It's like that can withstand a hurricane,
Yeah.
that foundation. But then you go inside and some of it is just too old. Like it still has radiators for heating. Like that takes too long. I don't like radiators. But I get it though, because, they're saying nowadays homes aren't built like they used to be built. They don't have, some of the sturdiness or whatnot, the
Yeah.
duration that some of the old homes have. So I can see both sides.
Yeah, I mean, to your point on that, they just literally don't build them like they used to. My wife and I,
Yeah.
we built a home in Arizona, and on day one, we had a ton of problems. And
Really?
yeah, so I will tell you what's kind of the young folks that are coming here that work for these tech companies and are young doctors and professionals. They're going in those old homes, and if somebody has rehabbed those homes and updated them to current amenities, I mean, they are the ones going for all the money. So there's a huge, huge need and want for people
I
looking for
bet.
that old school character. But then they're also like they want to go in. They want central AC. They want central.
Right. Putting that modern
Yeah,
feel and
yeah.
innovation. Okay. Features inside.
So if you
Gotcha.
have somebody that comes in and does that, and I actually have an investor from out of the country, he flew in to strictly do that because there's such a need for that here in Pittsburgh. So
I bet.
so if you ever come to Pittsburgh, I'll find you an old home that looks cool, but we'll get you all the new features.
Oh
So
man. Okay. Now that's
yeah,
good. That's good.
Mhm.
That's like putting a good engine in one of the old classic cars,
There you
man.
go.
You know what I'm saying?
That's
Yeah.
a great
Okay. Cool.
analogy.
Hey, so Pittsburgh also has a reputation, besides being a steel city, it's known as one of the greenest cities in the country. I didn't know anything about this. I didn't even know this was a thing that people consider. But how do you think sustainable and eco-friendly features in homes become like a factor in buyers looking at potential
Yeah,
properties?
that's a great question, and I think part of it actually is a little what's the word I'm looking for? Confusing actually, because I think a lot of that comes from the city of Pittsburgh itself has more green space. So we have a ton of trees, and we have, to my knowledge, we have besides New York City, we have the most square footage of green parks in city limits. So we have Shenley Park, and we have Frick Park, and I think Shenley, and there's one on the north side. It was actually designed by the same architect as Central Park in New York. So that's a huge part of it. When it comes to the housing side of things, I think we're actually on the forefront of kind of just finally getting there. Solar panels and stuff like that are kind of popping up a little bit more.
Yeah.
I know a lot of our stuff is going electric and kind of getting away from the fossil fuel kind of stuff. But I think a lot of that statement that you're reading about is more about the green, the space and the parks that we have in the city of Pittsburgh. So, yeah, Pittsburgh's always been
Okay.
late to the party, but we get to the party.
Oh
So
yeah. Okay.
yeah, so our pricing's been lower. Our average, pricing, it's been hovering. At one point it was like in the 180s. I'm talking like 10 years ago, which was just dirt cheap.
Yeah.
So fast forward, I mean, we're probably in the high threes now. We're so diverse when it
Sheesh.
comes, yeah, but that's still low on a national level. So, um,
Yeah.
but yeah, so we're coming along. I mean, we're always late to the party, but part of the thing is we never got the hangover, so it's kind of a cool little feature. We've never had it
Yeah.
down here.
Yeah, see, it's when you speak of prices and things of that nature, it's all relative, man. Depends on where you are, because in the Lansing area, kind of where we are in mid Michigan, we talking about like median prices below 200,000. We talking about like 190 and stuff like that. So
So that's
I might look back like three is woo. I mean, but still, you can obviously find homes for 3, 4 in the area, but that just goes to show the markets, man.
yeah.
Yeah, woo,
Well,
it's crazy.
it's like location, and it's just kind of crazy because I would even say that that's really low on a national level. Is your area
Yeah,
the median
yeah,
home price? Yeah,
absolutely,
yeah.
absolutely. But despite Pittsburgh being a relatively small city compared to Philly and other surrounding cities, it still has this like diverse, unique neighborhoods that comprise of the whole city. Can you describe the unique characteristics of these different neighborhoods that bring the diverse cultures together?
Yeah, it's wild. I mean, it's actually one of my favorite parts. I mean, just to kind of give you a little clarity, it sounds like you already know this, but Pittsburgh's small. I mean, we're not even
Right.
in the top 50 metro for population. So, but
Mm.
everyone knows Pittsburgh. Everyone's got a goofy aunt or a crazy uncle or their dad liked the Steelers or whatever it may be.
Yep. Yep.
And a
Yep.
little plug for my broker, Compass. I mean, Compass is a huge national presence that kind of dominates New York, LA, Boston, Chicago, like those super high end. And so Pittsburgh didn't even fit their model, but there's always a connection. I talked to a lady who's been living in LA for 40 years, and she's coming back to buy a condo in Pittsburgh. She's like, I'm just coming home. And I'm like, 40 years in LA, and you're going to call Pittsburgh home still? And that's just kind of how it is. Um, but
Damn.
yeah, to your point, we're small, but we have 90 neighborhoods, which is kind of crazy. And
Mm.
they're legit neighborhoods that the city of Pittsburgh actually acknowledges. Um, you know, it's kind of, if you go to New York City, for an example, it's massive, right? And they got like Little Italy and Chinatown and all this stuff. And
Correct. Correct.
we're not on that level by any means, but we definitely we have Polish Hill. We do have a Little Italy still. Um,
Okay.
I actually learned the other day that we still have a Chinatown. We have one building. It's this great. It's called Chinatown Inn, and it's
Nice.
literally Chinatown. It's one building. It's historic. It's just one building. That's our Chinatown.
Oh wow.
But when it comes to the neighborhoods, it is kind of cool to see. I mean, Squirrel Hill is our biggest neighborhood, and that's where you have a little bit of the bigger suburban-like homes in the city. But then
Mhm.
we've had a huge resurgence in a neighborhood called Lawrenceville. Started about 10 years ago, which is one of the craziest, like low income, just nothing going on down there, starving artist kind of thing. But now there's $1 million pads down there, and people are kind of going. It's on the river. So a lot of these
Uh,
neighborhoods are kind of like reemerging and kind of popping up, and it's great. Um,
yeah.
the challenge is we're again the small part. There's just not a lot of it to sell, so we're kind of seeing a lot of the same stuff across the country with availability
Yep.
and demand.
Yep.
So that's really our problem, and
Yeah.
the topography and the bridges. So we've got more bridges. Depending upon who you chat with, it's a different number. But I mean, they say we have more bridges in our city than anywhere in the world. I think Venice is up there, but we've got rivers and hills, and so it gets a little crazy getting around town. So the neighborhoods
Really?
are
Okay.
pretty, like, you can have a neighborhood right here and a neighborhood right next to it, and they couldn't be more different, quite frankly.
Mm.
So
Mm. I like that. You got to respect that, man. A town that has a bunch of different neighborhoods with a bunch of different cultures, and still just live together.
yep,
Everybody just wants to live and work, contribute to economy,
yep.
and just have a good time. That's what's up, man. But you since you spoke on someone, and that kind of drove me crazy. Somebody wants to move from LA to Pittsburgh. You want to give up all that good weather, man? All right, that stood out to me when
Yeah,
you
that's
said
we
that.
got we got to talk about that off the air.
Man, but since we are talking about relocating, I know that you specialize in relocating also. So let's talk about that. You dealing with a client who's coming from maybe California, even out of the country,
Yep.
coming into Pittsburgh. What techniques, methods do you use to help them get to know Pittsburgh and find the right place for them?
Yeah, that's a great question, and I think that's what's making Pittsburgh great is the people that are coming here are kind of bringing the best of where they're coming from, so to speak. So
Mm-hmm.
usually it's jobs, right? So I'll go back to the jobs.
Right.
Usually it's somebody that's getting a pretty good job here in Pittsburgh. They start to do the research. They start to hear that it's the weather is about the only thing negative. They look at the housing, which is relatively cheap on a from LA or Chicago or New York,
Correct. Correct.
and the quality of life is really high, and then the cost of living is really low. So
Mm,
they're coming. And so what happens is a lot of these big companies that you've probably heard of. I mean, there's GNC, American Eagle. I mean, I can go on and on, but they have headquarters here. Alcoa. I mean, and on and on and on. So good people are coming here for those jobs. And then there's also the universities and a lot of the athletes, and we have 3 pro teams, which is kind of great for a small city. But yeah, they're coming here, and a lot of times they land on my desk because my previous broker, we would have a whole certification. You had to be relocation certified, and they come, and I sell them on the city first, And then I think it's real important. We talked about the diversity of the neighborhoods. Like, okay, what kind of neighborhood do you want? Do you want to walk
Right, right.
somewhere? Are you okay with driving to Starbucks, or do you want to walk to Uncle Larry's coffee shop? So like
Mm-hmm.
you kind of figure out what they want, and we got it all. But it started happening so much that I have a city tour guide on my team. So if time permits and they come to Pittsburgh to visit Pittsburgh, maybe for a job interview, I'll send them out
Right.
with I have a legit city tour guide, and she kind of takes them around and shows them the city. She does the touristy things, but
Mm.
it's easy to sell the city. It's absolutely beautiful.
There you go.
So yeah, but we've got a lot of those people coming into town. For me, it's about the neighborhood and just kind of the vibe that they want, because the house could be perfect, but if they're just not feeling everything else, or the commute,
Right.
our commutes are all over the place. I know a little bit about Detroit, where I just learned this the other day. I was talking about 8 Mile and 7 Mile and 6 Mile. Well, that's how many
Mm-hmm.
miles from downtown the center of down. I didn't know that. I thought that was pretty
Pretty
cool.
much. Yeah, yeah.
So
Yeah, pretty much.
7 Mile and 8 Mile is actually far, in my opinion, from downtown. So, but what I'm getting at is, like, some of these people want like a 10-minute commute, and with our topography and our tunnels and our bridges and our rivers, it's like it may look on a map like you're right there, but you're really not. It could be a 30
Mm.
minute drive or whatever, because we have a lot of bottlenecking going on into the city.
Also,
So
is it a lot of traffic there?
time.
Crazy
Well,
traffic?
it's not a lot, because again, we're not a big, but it's just that the infrastructure is a little bit older. I mean,
Right.
Allegheny County is literally the oldest county in the country, and that's where Pittsburgh resides. So,
Mm.
and we have our limitations. I mean, we have rivers. I mean, that's why we have bridges. So,
Right, right.
so I think figuring all that out and finding out what they want is a little bit of a challenge, but I've got it down to a science, and I think ultimately it ends up working out. But yeah, it's a lot of moving parts, especially
Yeah,
when someone's
man.
used to coming from. I had some folks from Georgia, and in Georgia, you can get to downtown in 10 minutes and have a brand new construction, and you're under 300K. Like, it's not possible here in Pittsburgh. So,
Yeah. Man, I can imagine 300K for a brand new home. Man, that is
not here.
unimaginable. But yeah, I know, right? Hey, so okay. Couple things that I just learned from this situation. One, you have a tour guide on your team. That's something I don't think I've heard yet. Not to
Yeah.
say that other realtors don't have that,
Yeah.
but you're the first person I've heard say that. I think that's an important part to have on your team, right? Because especially if you're moving to a new city, right? Because you want to know this neighborhood, this town, in and out, some of the unique things that the average citizen may or may not know, and then some things that they obviously know, the lingo, where things are, how to get around. That I think that was pretty nice. But also, I didn't know that you needed a relocation certification. Is that what you said?
Well, yeah, at one point it was definitely a thing. I mean, so there's companies that they'll work with very high end relocation people, so like C-level people at, like, whatever. So what happens is and I don't know if you know this, but they go hire a third party company to facilitate all that. So a lot of times that third
Right.
party company will in fact require some sort of certification. So Serva, for example, is a huge company that, like, we would have to take yearly tests and kind of continue up on our education just to get those Serva relocation people. So um, it's kind of changing, I think, a little bit, because I will tell you the post COVID work from home kind of thing. I mean,
Right.
yeah, the relocation kind of thing. What's wild is relocation is probably down considerably on the work side, but we do have people wanting to come back to Pittsburgh because they can now work. They may be from Pittsburgh and they can work from anywhere, but still keep their job
Correct.
in Detroit or LA or whatever like that. So,
Hmm.
so yeah, it's still a thing. Probably not as common as it used to be.
Wow. Who would have known that you needed a certification? I would have thought you just needed your real estate license. I've completely heard of, a company or, an employer outsourcing, someone to actually handle relocating their employees or something like that. Like I know the NBA has a whole thing,
Yeah.
or sports teams, your franchise, they have a whole thing like that. But who knew that you needed a certification or something like that?
Well, so
I
check
don't know.
this.
That
This
just
will
blew
this
my
will blow
mind.
your mind too. So I can't say this is 100% certain, but at one point I heard that the average cost of the average relocation was $90,000. The average. That's
Sheesh.
crazy. So think,
Is
they got
that
to.
not even buying a home?
Well, part of it, yeah. So part of it is paying maybe
Oh,
the agent where they're coming from, their commission, depending upon the package, and then part of it might be, credit here for closing costs and stuff. But and then a lot of
okay.
these guys are having their move actually paid for, kind of thing. The movers, the packers, the whole deal. So it's crazy. It's
Okay.
it's a big
Man.
business.
Yeah, yeah. All right. Well, look, you're in the right space then. You're in the right space then, Joe. Can't be mad at that. I need you to clarify whether or not this is accurate. So they're saying that Pittsburgh has approximately 54% of residents renting their homes rather than owning. Is this true, first and foremost?
So full disclosure, I saw the notes that took me back a little bit. So we may have to dig a little bit on that. That seems high, but
Yeah.
I will say we have a high population of students. So any city is going to have their normal renter base. It's just pretty
Right.
typical.
Right.
And cities like New York and LA and Chicago, Detroit, like there's always a high rental rate. So the number surprised me a little bit. I'm not gonna be. It sounds like I got a lot of clients I can kind of approach to buy some homes,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
part of me isn't surprised because of the universities. So we have a lot of universities in the area, really good ones. We have University of Pittsburgh, Duquesne, Chatham. I mean, I can go on and on and on. So and then there's a huge graduate presence after that. So we have a lot of young doctors coming for their fellowships and stuff like that for UPMC, which is our big medical. So part of me is not surprised by that, but
Right.
that's a high number.
Let me tell you something, Joe. I did my research on Google, and I'm a big fan of citing sources, but I did not write the source down with this one. That's what I should have done. So, ladies and gentlemen listening right now, let me just tell you, please cite your sources, or if you get information, especially from a random guy on the internet like me, make sure you look it up and cite the source, because I don't know how accurate or recent that information is. I should have cited the source like I did, or like I should have done. But anyway, thank you for at least putting some perspective on that for us, Joe. And thank you for pulling up a chair and joining us here at the closing table. Before we get out of here, Joe, I need you to do us a favor. If you have any last words and or want to tell the people how they can reach out to you, please do so now.
Yeah, so if you're ever coming to Pittsburgh, I would love to connect, especially if you're buying a home or if you know somebody that's selling a home. My email, I'll just throw it out there. I mean, it's joe@yostteam.com. That's
Mm-hmm.
YOSTTEAM.com. Find me on Instagram, which is my favorite social, at Yost And that's about it. I'm happy to answer any questions about Pittsburgh. I moved back because I love the city. So hopefully that comes across in the broadcast. But it's a city that I believe in. It's a city that I love. I have two young boys that I wanted to get back here and grown up and be
There it
surrounded by
is.
people of Pittsburgh, and that's what makes a city great is the people itself. So.
Joe Yost, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us, taking time out to be here on the closing table. For our YouTube audience, I need you to do us a favor. If you got this far in the video, you got to hit the like button. All right. Then you got to hit the share button and also subscribe to our channel. And if you are listening on Apple, Spotify, or any other podcast platforms, please do the same. You need to hit the like button, give us a 5-star rating, and also subscribe for our latest content. Joe, I like to leave our audience with a question before we get out of here. Here's a question for your audience. Would you prefer to live in a home with sustainable, eco-friendly features like solar panels and things of that nature? Or does that not make a difference to you at all? Leave your comments below. Other than that, we'll see you next time.